Hello and welcome to Screams and Streams, the podcast that looks at the best and worst horror movies as rated on Rotten Tomatoes from 1970 onwards. I'm your host, Chad Campbell, and with me is my co-host,
Mike Karen.
Be sure to check us out on Instagram. Our handle is ScreamStreamPod. Also, check out our website at screamsandstreams.com for more information about all the films that we are looking at. In this podcast, we do jump around quite a bit in the telling of the film. We hit all aspects, so there are spoilers. So if you're not into spoilers, then please stop, watch the movie, come back, and rejoin us for our discussion. Today we were looking at Ken Russell's 1980 film Altered States. It scored 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. And let's get into it. Mike, you're going to give us our summary.
All right. The succinct summary on IMDb is: a psychologist experiments with drugs and a sensory deprivation tank and has visions he believes are genetic memories. So that's essentially what the movie is more or less about.
Yep.
But the second summary, written by someone named Hugo, just makes it such a more fanciful film. In the late 1960s, just for a lark, graduate student Eddie Jessup, known for being unconventional, brilliant, and slightly mad, conducts experiments with an isolation chamber using himself as his subject. I just love the just for a lark.
Just for a lark. Just for something to do.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. Like, he's just like, let's see where this goes. But
yeah.
I haven't seen the expression just for a lark in so long. So I really wanted to just give Hugo his props on that one.
Yeah, and so with that, we're going to wander into first impressions. This is the first time I had seen this film, so it was interesting. It was different. I really actually liked the film, and it's funny because we just recorded our talk on Vertigo the other day and how it was about obsession and his obsession with bringing someone back from the dead and how he loved her so much. And I just found some parallels with this with obsession because he is obsessed with going back into the deprivation tank.
Right.
And continuing his research no matter what the cost. He always has to get back there. So he's obsessed with that. And his woman that he picks up is obsessed with him, just loves him unconditionally, and he can do no wrong. At the drop of a hat, he'll call her and she'll be there.
Yeah.
No matter what. And it doesn't matter what he does, but she's beside him 100%, like really to a fault.
Right.
So I really like that kind of parallel with there. You really see him go into his crazed obsession later on in the film.
Yeah.
At the start, it's like, oh, I'm going to go to Mexico. I'm going to take some peyote or whatever he takes there.
Yeah.
And has this super weird trip. And then it really takes off and he needs to get back. He needs to go. It's not that I want to see what happens. It's I have to do this.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. I also found it really funny how he just can't seem to be happy in his own skin.
Yes.
He's got a wife. He's got a kid. He's got a good job. He's got everything that is supposed to be, the poster child for happiness.
Yeah.
And he's miserable.
Yes.
I hate this. I don't like this life. I'm out.
Yeah. He's bound by the trappings of typical existence.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the only way he feels free is to be in this deprivation tank or doing these studies on himself. And yeah, I just found that really interesting. So Mike, what did you think?
For me as well, this was my first viewing of the film. This was one of those movies where it's kind of like Slacker and Videodrome, where I can remember the VHS cover at the video store.
Oh yeah.
But then I never rented.
Yeah.
Right. So Altered States was this one where it's like, it always intrigued me. The movie poster has always sort of been like, that looks just weird and I want to know what it is. So I was very excited that this was one of our movies. So I finally get to see Altered States.
Right.
And it was not the movie that I expected, but it was a better movie than I thought it would be.
Right.
I enjoyed the philosophy of it. I enjoyed the sort of mystical mushroom trips that they do in the discussion of that and the psychedelics, especially when we're in a world where microdosing is becoming more popular. And then
there's more research on psilocybin and its effects on your mental state and the positive effects.
Yeah.
And treatment using magic mushrooms, right?
Yeah. And like ayahuasca and the effects of that. And like, that's one of the things that I've always been interested in. And I'm trying to like see how I can get into that culture so I could maybe go on a trip to see
Oh, yeah.
what an ayahuasca journey is. So this movie, I think there was a little bit of trepidation where, is this a movie about mushroom trips that's going to be written from sort of an outsider, almost reefer madness-esque, like the dangers of using it, which there is that sort of like, there is a danger to it. There is an impact of it.
Right.
But I think they did a really good job of sort of, again, it's called altered states, but there's that altered state of consciousness and that altered state of perception that these drugs do allow for people. So
I think there's a good note there where, when you use it in moderation, but when you abuse it, then it gets out of hand.
Yeah. So I was quite happy with the way it handled it. There are a few things that I had with like the pacing of it, or, you know, we've discussed this with others where, is this really horror? Right. And with our giallos and that. So for the first hour, I was like, well, this was not the right choice. And then we finally see the reveal of the beast and the madness and the psychosis. And so I was like, oh, okay, now we're getting into the thriller / scare part of it. And so I really liked it. I'm not stepping on any of my research, but a lot of the reviews talked about how Ken Russell was the perfect director to do this because of the visuals and the psychedelic nature of it. Yeah. And it's interesting because I went back through like, what have I seen by Ken Russell? And the only one I know is the movie Whore, which is a very gritty portrayal of the night in the life of a street worker. Oh. And so for me, like Ken Russell was more that sort of gritty, sort of harsh light on reality. And then suddenly we get this like, no, he's the perfect director for this. So I'm curious to go back and revisit the rest of his catalog to see why this was the appropriate director.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think he did a great job. You talked about vertigo and the connections.
Yeah.
And the sort of psychosis portrayed with James Stewart in that, with the spirals and the floating heads and the obsession.
Yep.
Then in the trips, we do have the floating heads again and the sort of matted screen of visuals and front images. Yeah. So you're right. There is a great parallel between the two that I didn't catch until you mentioned that. I was like, absolutely. Yeah. These were great back-to-backs.
Yeah. I know. I thought it was really interesting while I was watching it. It's like, holy smokes, there's a lot of Hitchcock in here.
Yeah.
And on that note, we're going to move into our Tropes Hall of Shame category. Mike, you're going to kick us off with this one. What trope did you have?
My first one is the idea that academics cannot understand emotions or cannot comprehend emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have Jessup, who is one of the youngest academics to go for his PhD. Yeah. Right. Because his wife is like, oh, I'm 24. I'm the youngest. He's like, well, I was 23. Right. He just has to get
So I win.
But he cannot express love, right? She's like, I love you. And he never says it. Yeah. And so there's this coldness and the utilitarianness. And you talked about that. Like, he must have kids. He must get married. Yep. But he's never happy because he doesn't understand that emotional social existence. So that was my trope.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So my first one was, it's near the end of the film when he's going into his deprivation tank one more time. All this stuff has happened. They found him with a dead goat. And now he's going back in and they're like, nothing's happening. We got to turn it off. We got to turn it off. We got to turn it off. Oh, wait, something's happening. Well, let's let it go. Yeah. So it took so long for what does it usually take? Oh, around a couple hours. And it's 4 hours later. And then he finally gets into this trip that's sending him to a different dimension or wherever he's going in his mind, right? Yeah. But we have to turn it off and then, oh no, now let's go. So I just thought we've seen that a lot. Yeah. Not just necessarily in horror movies, but in movies in general, where they're doing something and it's not working. Well, I guess we're going to shut it down. Oh, wait, something's happening.
Oh, good thing we didn't shut it down when you said to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For me, my next trope is there's a party, and I don't know who house this is at, but it's all of the academics are going to a party.
Yes, they're playing The Doors. Is it that one? Yeah.
And that's my trope.
Baby, light my fire.
Yeah. So they're playing The Doors at first, and then they're playing like this Indian sitar music, and there's cannabis going around. So it's just that whole like 1960s, like
the free love, man. Yeah. Hey, let's get all messed up.
The Beatles went to India, so therefore we have to play Indian music when we're high.
Yeah, well, and The Doors is just so synonymous with being high. Yeah. And not just with being high, but being psychedelic high. Yeah. Like LSD, mushrooms, all that stuff. They really, hit that home. Yeah. And rightly so. My next one was the yelling friend, the yelling academic. You're just crazy. I won't stand for it. I can't believe you're going to do this. All right, well, I'm taking it up to the top.
Yeah.
And he does exactly what he wants him to do, but he does it while he's yelling and screaming how much of an idiot he is.
Yeah.
And then, you're crazy. And then he goes. The other thing, I don't know if this is a trope or it's not really a trope. I hated the fact that they kept calling him insane and mad, and we just really didn't get a lot of that unless he was in his state, his altered state.
Well, it's his compulsion to go back in, therefore he's mad, right?
But at the start, they call him.
Yeah.
They're, oh, you're a little crazy. Oh, you're this. And I'm not getting that
Right.
out of the gate. Eventually, I do see it kind of grow. But at the start, I was like, I don't see him crazy. I see him as an academic trying to prove something.
Right. Yeah.
And people are, saying he's nuts. But I just didn't get that. So
For sure.
Did you have another one, Mike?
Just on that whole, like, he's a mad academic, I guess, the trope of a scientist testing on themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, because there's the whole, it's ready for human trials. It's not ready for human trials. Yeah. And then he's like, well, I guess I'll go into the tank high on mushrooms.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Because nobody else will. Yeah.
I can't ethically have a test subject, so I'll just test on myself.
Yeah. I had another one going to Mexico on a journey, on a trip. How many times, we went to peyote, like it's in Young Guns. It's in everybody's tripping balls on this stuff in Mexico. So apparently that's the place to go.
Yeah. Well, it is South America,
in the desert.
Right? I had the "you made it real, you can make it unreal," which is a quote. Because there is, and I don't know if this is stepping on your stuff later on, but all of his trips are sort of preceded by a comment where she talks about genetic memory. And then therefore his next trip, there is this whole genetic memory effect. There's he listens to the recording of the baboons and then he, for lack of a better term, apes that sound or mimics that sound while he's transformed. So I actually did like this because except for one sort of complicated moment in the film, this could be just Jessup tripping balls and it's all just from previous conversation. There is no actual sort of supernatural effect on him.
Right.
But then it is still a trope of like, it's all in your head. You can get rid of it. Yeah. It's like the swarm where if you just touch the bee that's not there, it'll go away.
It'll go away.
Yeah.
I had another one, the whole fugue state.
Right.
Going into this, I don't know what happened. And I don't know. Oh, you were in there and you were doing this. And so I just put that in because it just seems to be like at that time, not so much, but now it just seems like a cop out, like a way to get away with something.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, he's not a really bad person because he was in a fugue state.
Right. My last one, and this one's just kind of ridiculous effects, and it felt like almost like a 1920s monster effect, but steam when the machine breaks down. So
there's always steam.
There's always steam. Like he's in this deprivation tank and he's tripping out and they open it up and there's this like bright light and steam comes pouring out when for no reason.
Plus, I don't know if that's the best way to get out of a deprivation tank. When you're just in your own mind and stuff, is it really all that great to open up the door and be like, hey.
I don't know. I did talk to a friend because Calgary has float.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Spas.
I've never done it, but
I've always been interested.
I have too. Yeah.
And there was part of me that's like, well, it's spring break. I got time. Maybe I'll go for a float to see what it's like and I just ran out of time.
Yeah.
But I have a friend who does float quite frequently and he just I'm like, so are there hallucinations? Like, do you feel that? And he's like, no, it's just sort of this relaxing inner reflection. So
it's funny because I have a comment about that in my research when we get to the later thing. But yeah.
So for him, it was just like, no, like he's done it with music, without music, with lights, without lights.
Yeah.
But he just sort of says like, you just sit there and like focus inward. But he doesn't, for him anyway, because I know there's other people that freak out and feel claustrophobic.
Right.
But for him, it was, there was no transcendental experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But he also wasn't dosed on a large amount of mushrooms like Jessup is in the film. So
no, and that would be interesting to go into a scenario like that,
right,
as messed up as he was, right? Because you're just alone with your thoughts.
Yeah.
Which
could be terrifying.
Can be scary, yeah.
They're all going to laugh at you.
They're all going to laugh at you. All right. And with that, we're going to segue into our one-liners. I'm going to kick this off. And my first one is from Emily Jessup, played by Blair Brown. She's talking about her lovemaking with Eddie Jessup, William Hurt. And she says, I feel like I'm being harpooned by a raging monk in an act of receiving God.
That is my first line too.
Is it?
Yeah.
It was an amazing line. Later on in the film, he says, is it really that bad? Like, is it that weird? And she says, well, sometimes. Yeah.
Well, and I had the full quote written down.
Okay, do the full quote, yeah.
Where she's like, even sex is a mystical experience for you. You carry on like a flagellant, which can be very nice, but I sometimes wonder if it's me that's being made love to. I feel like I'm being harpooned by some raging monk in the act of receiving God. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
And it's going to come up a later topic, but that is aggressive.
I love the question of, I wonder if I'm the one being made love to.
Yeah, because he's not present in those scenes.
No. He almost goes into a fugue state while he's having sex with her. Right?
Yeah.
Like he always kind of drifts off and.
Yeah, he's staring at the fire.
Is that a fire or a heat lamp? I thought it was like a heater.
It is a heat lamp, yeah.
So he just gets mesmerized by that light and it's all sweaty and carnal and crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, when she says that, I'm like, wow. And there is a ton of religious imagery in this film.
Oh, yeah. The iconography is insane.
Unbelievable.
Someone has a hammer hitting you like, in case you didn't get it.
Yeah. Jesus is this. Yeah, it's crazy. So you did that one. Do you have another one?
I do, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And it's just when they jump forward in time with no hint. And I kind of liked it. There was no like 7 years later. It was just they talk about getting together and she's going off to study somewhere and he's going off somewhere. And the next thing we know, they have two kids who are beyond the age of toddler.
Yeah.
And I was so confused. I'm like, wait, where do these kids come from? Whatever. But everyone's coming back to their house to visit, I think, for a dinner. And when his assistant's walking through, he just goes, a terrific housekeeper. She's not.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what a shitty thing to say.
Yeah. Just mean.
Yeah, the house is a mess, but like she's an academic. She's busy. Yeah. Why is it her responsibility?
Yeah, exactly. And then it's revealed that she's having a divorce. It's like, well, actually, this is why it's like this. So, yeah.
Relationship is ending.
Yeah. I have another one. Unfortunately, I didn't write down who said this, but I just wrote it down. We've got nothing else to explain this meaningless horror of life.
Oh, that could be anybody. That could be Balaban's character.
I thought it
could have been William Hurt.
Sounded like something Jessup would say because he just really hates real life.
Right. Yeah.
In this film. And I wish I would have wrote it down, but I just remember hearing it and I was writing it down while I was watching the film. So I didn't want to miss other stuff. So I wrote it really, really quickly, but I just didn't get who said that quote. I did have one more. And the one I had was actually, it's not really an important line, kind of a throwaway line. He's trying to pick up his wife at this time. And he's, saying how mesmerized he is by her beauty and all this stuff. But he says, anthropology seems to attract good-looking women. Just thought that was kind of funny. So I wrote it down. And that ends our one-liners. So we're going to go into what doesn't hold up. We have a few. And Mike, you're going to tell us your first one.
We talked about this. Well, you mentioned this already, but I wrote this in a very just direct kind of cold way. His hallucination seems very heavy-handed with religious iconography.
Yes.
And I don't know if it doesn't hold up or not, but it was just like, this is about God. This is about reality. It was too much.
So I wrote a question about that. And I just said, so this is a search for God in any form?
I think so, but there's also like his weird relationship with his father that he brings up and keeps going back to as well.
Yeah, and I don't think we see enough of that. He does make reference to it a couple of times, but we don't really, I know we see him in the hallucination and it's messed up, but yeah.
Yeah. It just like that makes me think about like Fight Club, where it's like if our fathers are our stand-in for God, what does that tell us when we're a generation of men raised by women? And so there's this Jessup's sort of broken childhood, but it was too much. It was too heavy-handed. And
I do agree. And they go to the well way too often.
Yeah.
When he goes to Mexico, it's full on.
Yeah. When he like hallucinates into hell.
Yes. Yeah. What didn't hold up for me was I loved the caveman in the shadows when he kind of de-evolves into this
troglodyte or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. I loved him in the shadows. I hated him when he was lit.
Yeah.
I thought it just looked bad.
Yeah. It ruins the effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
kind of cheesy. And then he's skulking around, which I liked. I liked the way he moved, but he needed to stay in the shadows.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see what I was afraid of. Because when he opens that deprivation tank and he's hairy, I was, whoa, what's going on here? And then you don't see him and he runs around and I thought it was creepy then. And then when the first time I see him as he's looking through the door window, I just laughed. Oh no, that's not what I wanted to see.
Well, even like, when he reaches out and he's super hairy, it's like, okay, so they're physically representing this devolution or altering of or this DNA memory. But then when we no longer see him, I think it works better because then it's like, is this Jessup's like psychosis or what? But then once we see him fully transformed and lit, it's like, oh no, it's physically represented. That's what I was bringing up in my first impressions, where like, I think this is a great idea where can the trip go bad and can he be influenced? Right. But then no, this is like, it's the security guards see him as
a caveman.
It's like, oh, that ruined it for me.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree too. Yeah.
I like the idea of it being, he thinks he's a caveman.
I do too. I wish they would have kept it more like that. If like he could have moved like a caveman or skulked around. Yeah. And if they would have kept him dimly lit and we didn't know, I mean, we would have assumed that was him coming out of there, but to actually change him into a caveman, it was almost like they were trying to do a werewolf kind of thing.
Yeah. If they'd have had him as a caveman, but then when we see it from others' perspectives, it's just William Hurt.
Yes.
That would have been good too.
Like in his mind, this is what he is, but everybody, what are you doing? Yeah.
I think that would have been a better and more impactful.
And I think it would have really spoken to his insanity. Everybody calls him mad and a little bit crazy. It really would have hit that home more.
Yeah, it definitely goes with what the rest of the film is trying to tell us.
Exactly.
Too.
Did you have another one, Mike?
Yes. And again, this is something I brought up in my first impressions. And it's the fact that it takes an hour for the beast to show up.
Okay, yeah.
Only because if this is classified as a horror, which it is according to Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, and it's considered body horror, right? And then when I hear body horror, I immediately go to Cronenberg.
Okay,
right? And sort of I'm expecting this twisting and warping of the flesh, which we do get, but it takes so long to get there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take me away from the film, but I think it's two very different films. There's the pursuit of the psychedelic understanding of reality of the first bit, and then there's the beast of the sort of second half or the last third. If you're going to have the beast, it needs to either show up earlier or, like we've talked about, should have been done differently.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned it. It's almost like two different films because I felt the exact same way when I watched it. As soon as he makes that transformation, I was like, oh, it's a monster movie. It's it's an attack.
It's American Werewolf in Paris.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas before it was more mental. It was more psychedelic. They were building tension to what was going to happen. But then when the big reveal happened, for me, it just kind of fell a bit flat because of how he looked and how they did it.
Yeah. It's almost a trope where the reveal of the monster ruins it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I have one more, and it's again to do with the caveman. And I really don't want to hit this too bad because actually I did enjoy the film, but it was the sound he made, the screams and stuff. I didn't like it. The very first one where he comes out of the door and he's ooh, and he does this weird kind of scream yell kind of thing. And I don't know.
I think that's him trying to be the baboon, right? Because he's so focused on like, do you have a recording of these baboons that you saw in Africa?
But I thought that was a series of clicks and grunts.
Yeah. So maybe.
Because I do remember that because she's trying to have a talk about their relationship.
Yeah.
And he's just hyper fixated on these baboon calls.
Yeah.
Right. They said I was doing that and a series of grunts and clicks. And when he comes out as the caveman, he's kind of just, he's just, I didn't buy the voice stuff. Yeah. Right. That they chose.
For sure. It felt almost like an after school special.
Yeah. Really? Yeah. It really takes a downturn when that part happens.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to go into our next category, most gratuitous. I had one, and it is the quick scene after he goes on his trip, and it shows his wife and the Komodo dragon.
Oh, right.
And there's a bunch of flashes, and then when they open up in the morning, the dragon's been eaten.
Right.
And I thought when I first saw that, I out loud, sitting there in the basement watching it, and whoa,
Right.
I just thought it was really off-putting, gross, very well done with the quick cuts. And then the next morning, the tribe kicks him out.
Right. Yeah.
You killed this lizard, you're gone. Yeah.
You went too far.
Well, and to kill a Komodo dragon, man, with your bare hands,
Yeah.
you got to be something special.
And I love his buddy who's down there with him is like, yeah, you just like got up and ran out of the cave. And then next thing we knew, we heard shrieking.
Yeah.
Like nobody witnessed what happened. Nobody can talk to him about what happened.
Yeah. And you see him kind of leaving the cave when all the fireworks are going off in his mind and stuff. And he just kind of leaves and then does that. And everyone's, oh, yeah. Now we're going to move into terrifying or titillating. I had one out of the gate here that I'm going to start with. And again, it is the wife as the lizard.
Oh, okay.
When he sees her
Yeah.
in that, what is that yoga pose in Cobra?
Yeah.
And then it flashes in between the dragon and her, which after that scene, and it was switching back from the wife to the lizard, I wondered why he attacked it so viciously.
Right. If he saw it as her.
As something that he was supposed to love or find attractive. Why did he rip it apart?
But if that's not the life he wants, then she's like this, I don't want to use the word anchor, but she's something that's tethering him to a life that he doesn't want. So he wants to journey out and see the world and explore consciousness.
Yes, yeah.
But he can't escape her.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's still this complication of he can't escape her, therefore mutilate and kill is wrong. But maybe that's what it is again, it's this, he cannot escape these bounds against him based on what society expects. I don't know.
That's a good explanation. I just thought it was because he does it later with the goat, and with the goat, he doesn't see. At that point, I think it's just food.
I think it's just food. Yeah.
Yeah.
The hunt and the kill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he can't kill the rhino, but he kills the goat.
But he can kill the goats. And the elephants that he gets.
I was watching that. I was like, are those African or Indian elephants? Because they looked African, but you would not get in an area with 3 African elephants like that. So
no,
I was just like, that stuntman is in danger.
Very well trained, I guess. Mike, did you have one?
I did. We've already kind of talked about it, but it's the first sex scene between them.
Oh, yeah.
And again, his face is like he's elsewhere, but it's just violent and aggressive.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't care who's with him. And while they're having this weird sex scene, she asks him, what are you thinking about? And he's like, God, Jesus, crucifixions. Like that's not pillow talk.
No.
And I just can't imagine, like she clearly loves this guy because that is a red flag right there. Like,
oh yeah. Yeah. What are you thinking about while we make love? God, crucifixions. Oh, interesting. But she buys it and she's okay with it.
Yeah. Well, and then she goes into the whole, like, I don't know if I'm being made love to or not. And harpooned like a monk or harpooned by a monk.
Receiving God. Yeah. Just crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
My other one was that.
Oh, okay.
It was the sex scene between the two of them. It's just raw and sweaty and weird, and everything he does in that scene too, when he gets mesmerized by the light, like he just goes off into his own world, right? And she's, what are you doing? And he is a different cat.
Like he's 100% just ego.
Yes.
In the idea of ego, right? Like he's just all about himself, focused on himself.
Definitely. Yeah. And that becomes even more apparent throughout the film. It's all about him.
Yeah.
Okay. And we are going to go into our stood the test of time. Mike, you're going to kick us off with this one. What did you have for stood the test of time?
I loved the effect of the warping of his body.
Oh, yes.
When he's visualizing the transformation and you look at his arm and you see these bubbles forming and moving.
Yeah.
Later when it like his full torso, I think they did such a good job with that.
It reminds me of Naked Lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, Cronenberg and the body horror.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then again, I knew this was a body horror film. So finally I started to see that and I was like, oh, finally we're getting to it.
Yeah.
But I went back and watched that scene a couple times and it is seamless.
Yeah.
Like they do such a good job with the makeup.
Very well done.
Yeah.
Just to piggyback off that, mine is the special effects.
Yeah.
I thought the effects were awesome.
Yeah.
There's some green screens that are a little hokey, but he's also in a trip.
Right.
So I didn't think there was any bleeding or anything that looked super fake because he was going through this journey in his mind, right?
Right.
So I thought the effects were very well done.
I totally agree. And even at the end, when they've animated sort of I forget what happens to her, but suddenly she's no longer herself and she's like this weird red, almost magma form. And
and he's ice and she's
fire.
Yeah. No, that was so cool.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
Yeah. I've got it later for the aha-esque bouncing off the walls.
Yeah, no, that was really well done. So the effects in this film definitely stood the test of time.
Yeah.
I did have another one though, which was William Hurt's acting.
Yeah.
I thought he did a great job when he's almost like an addict explaining why he needs to do this.
Yeah.
There's a scene where he's arguing with her and he's just going off and explaining his point. But there's a sense of desperation, rage, and obsession all in that group or in his lines. And I thought he killed it.
This is his first major film.
Yeah.
Which blew me away because I know the William Hurt of like A History of Violence.
Yes.
Right. And that sort of massive presence in the sort of history he brings to his roles now.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing him in this was just, like you'd think he'd been in scores of films.
Countless films. Yeah. He really sells it.
Yeah.
So on that note, we're going to go into our next category, which is eerie to ear splitting. Mike, you're going to help us out with this one out of the gate.
My first part is dealing with the music when he's in Mexico leading up to the ritual. And
I had that too. Yeah, that's it. Go ahead.
But they're preparing for this ritual and he doesn't quite understand what's going on. There's blood going into a pot.
Yeah.
And the music for me as a viewer was just so disorienting.
I know. I felt the same way.
Yeah.
I made a note of it. I was super eerie, this ritual music. Yeah.
Yeah. It was so good because usually so many films in the past where the music has attempted to do that, it's become overbearing and you become hyper focused on the music and how bad it is. But this one, I was just like, it took me right to the place where the character was.
Yeah. I really thought it was very well done. So I'll skip to my next one. I've already mentioned it was the overall sound effects of the caveman. I just didn't like.
No.
That was kind of ear splitting for me.
Yeah.
The eerie part was the music for the ritual, but yeah, that was all the other sound effects and things that they used were very well done. I hated the choice of that caveman audio.
I had put for this section, the music is a bit overbearing when they search the basement.
Oh yeah.
It became like this whole what's going to happen? Like for a film that was so good with its sound design. Yeah. It became too much of a punch through at that moment for me.
That's a good one. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. So now we're going to move into a what the fuck moment. So my what the fuck was at the end after she saves him through the swirling depth of insanity or whatever's going on there. She's sleeping on the couch or on the chair and he is in the bed. I get that.
Yeah.
Because he needs to recover. He's had a tough go. He gets up, walks over to the chair, gives her an Afghan. And then in the next shot, he didn't take her back to bed. She's still in the chair.
Right.
And I was just, why the fuck isn't he trying to help her out a little bit here? Like the chair is like something my buddy used to pass out in university. Yeah. It's just this big lounger and she's asleep on it. The way he treats her throughout the film is deplorable. Yeah. And then that part, I was like, he won't even take her to the bed and say, hey, let's
just lay together.
Yeah, let's lay together and relax. And at one point she does crawl in earlier, but then she goes out and sleeps. Yeah. And she's naked.
Is that before or after he's finally said, I love you?
That is after.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then I don't get why either. Because then why is there still that separation?
Yes. He still holds her at bay.
Yeah.
Even though she's risked all this stuff, she's saved him. They've gone through this huge psychedelic weird trip. And she has basically brought him back from the brink. He said, I love you. And then he's still keeping her at bay.
Yeah, that is weird. I never caught that because I don't know where my mind went, but my last image is with him in the chair and she's sort of squatting on the ground, right? And they're both born again. They're both naked.
Yes.
Right. So it's that sort of Eden-esque first man, first woman together.
Yeah.
I forgot that there was more after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the next scene, she's still asleep in the chair and he's standing up and she's naked and he's standing up robed and they have this conversation at the end.
Yeah. I don't get why they would disassociate them again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that goes to like Jessup just can't Like he's so focused that even though he's confessed the love and they've had this moment, he's still pursuant of the other.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I just don't know if this guy can actually really commit and love.
Probably not.
There is an obsession, but he can only obsess over one thing.
Yeah.
And he can't open it up to her, even though he says he loves her. I'm sure he thinks he does. Or what he thinks love is.
Right. Yeah, that's probably exactly what it is. It's his academic view of love.
Right. But there's still this distance that he needs to keep. And it's just, because they go through hell and back, right?
Literally.
Yes. And he still won't fully accept her. So that was my what the fuck.
My what the fuck, I had two, but I mentioned the aha scene just because it's not really what the fuck because I get what they're trying to do, but it took me right to the Take On Me video where he's trying to break out of the pencil drawings into reality. Yeah. And so you've got William Hart like slamming against the wall and he's flashing through colors. And my other one is more just like but the rhino, where he runs out of the university, out of the basement, through the streets. He jumps over a wall and suddenly there's a rhino there. Like I know later it's a zoo because then he goes after the goats. Yeah. But it was just such a jarring visual to be like in the middle of this Boston, maybe. Yeah. Middle of this Boston urban center. And then there's a rhino there. Yeah. It's like, what the hell? Yeah, no, that was, I know that was pretty crazy. Okay, so after what the fuck, we go into our back it up moments. So Mike, you're going to kick us off with back it up. So sorry, I said to read what my note was. I'll go with this one. It's at towards the beginning of the film when they're at the party where we've talked about the Doors music and the cannabis. Yep. But it's when Jessup enters the party, the way he's framed and lit. Oh yeah. Like he's backlit, he's this silhouette and the music pulls up a bit. And so you're getting this idea of he is other to the people in this party. He's someone who's almost coming from a different plane already into this world. And I just thought, what a great way to introduce someone into that environment. It was just, we know he doesn't fit. Yeah. Yeah. And so I quite liked that. And if I was showing this movie to people, there's so many other great, weird, trippy things, but I'd be like, you got to watch this. Like it's so well done. No, I agree. I thought that was very well done. My back it up was the scene where he's not fully transformed into the caveman. It's the one right before it where they open up the deprivation tank and he's got makeup on and blood coming out of his mouth. Yeah. And he can't verbalize what has happened. He has to write it down. Oh yeah, that was good. And he keeps pointing at the page and scribbling this stuff and he just can't write it and they're trying to clean him up. And so I love that scene. Well, I like it too because they're like concerned and trying to recover him and save him. And he's just like, he's writing about like what happened and wanting to go on. And like he doesn't care about the damage he's done to himself. He's like, no, we need to continue my pursuit. Yes. Yeah. He is full on ready to sacrifice himself for this journey or this mission that he's decided to take on. Yeah. And when they try to pull him out early, multiple times, he's no, I'm good. Keep it going. He's in there for hours. Yeah. And they keep him going. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. My other back it up moment is, so there's Jessup played by William Hurt and then Bob Balaban plays Arthur Rosenberg, his assistant, who's helping out with these trips and monitoring him. But then Charles Hayde plays Mason Parrish, who's sort of another academic, right? Maybe a bit of a level above them. I'm not quite sure. Okay. But the interaction between the three of them is just fascinating to watch. But it's a line, but it's also the entire scene where he's getting mad at them when they've come back from Mexico and he sees what's happening. He's like, they're supposed to be scientists, not two kids in a dorm freaking out over Mexican mushrooms. Yes. Yeah. And just it is like, he's an adult, he's an academic, he's doing the true pursuits. And these are two kids just immaturely like, let's see what this button does kind of thing. Yeah. So I quite liked that whole interaction. Yeah, nice. Our next category is hiding in the shadows. I do have one. I wasn't sure where to put this, and I don't know if you saw the same thing that I did, but I wrote this note, and it's about Blair Brown, who plays Emily Jessup. I said, I swear this woman has the Jerry Seinfeld phenomenon with the lighting. Old, young, old, young. In some scenes, she looks older than either she's supposed to be playing or in other scenes. Yeah.
Other scenes, she looks quite young, and in other scenes, she looks weathered.
I did kind of catch it, and I didn't quite resonate with me, or it didn't quite stand out. But it is noticeable that she does look very different scene to scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's how he sees her, or if that's a conscious choice, if that was the lighting, the makeup from day to day, if it's a continuity error. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know.
But while I was watching it, I guess I could have thrown that in gratuitous, because while I was watching it, it just kind of, I was just, what? What is going on with her? She's hot in the diner, but she's ugly on the porch. I don't get it. She was never ugly. She just aged.
No, there's definitely a lighting difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had another one where I was always wondering, not always wondering, I watched this once. I was wondering why there are no police investigations after the goat stuff.
Right.
There were 2 cops killed.
Yeah.
Right. And while a security guard, a janitor.
Yeah, but 2 people on campus were killed by Jessup.
Were murdered. And then he's ripped apart a goat in the zoo, and he's the only person there. But he gets put in prison. She posts bail. There's no mention of what's happening afterwards. Is he being charged with a crime? Is something happening to him? Is there an investigation? They say, oh, a caveman killed these 2 people. But he's the only guy there.
Yeah.
Like, there are some questions that just kind of get left, and then immediately goes back into the deprivation tank, which I would think there's some security protocols that they would be, no, we're not doing this right now.
We're locking this down.
We need to...
The Ghostbusters shutdown of the tank.
Yes, we need to take a minute here, find out what's going on. So that was my hiding in the shadows bonus features. So I did not do great on this, but Mike, I know you did. So why don't you kick us off with this?
So the first thing I found that I quite liked was a review in the Washington Post, which until you started to give your first impressions, I actually didn't know where I sat with this film.
Okay.
And so I quite like this one because I agreed 100% with their review. You have to accept whole boatloads of bull with this flick, but wow, what a trip.
Yeah.
And I was like, yep, that is me. Like there's a lot of uncertainty of enjoyment at the time. And I was like, but it's a trippy film.
Yeah, for sure.
We talked about it's the film debut of William Hurt, but it was also the film debut of Drew Barrymore. She played one of Jessup's kids.
Really?
Yeah.
Even before E.T.?
Yeah.
This was her first film?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I did see her on the cast, but I couldn't figure out.
Yeah, I don't even think she speaks, but she's on camera.
So she's the little kid that they're carrying around or putting to bed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I did have one from the IMDb website. Arthur Paddy Chayefsky's disowned this movie.
Yeah.
Even though the dialogue in the screenplay was almost verbatim from his novel, he reportedly objected to the general tone of the film and the shouting of his precious words by the actors, which I actually enjoyed the shouting. I thought, well, maybe not the friend, the doctor that comes in and yell, because he yells a lot.
Mason Parrish, yeah.
But I thought William Hurt was appropriate. And anyways, it goes on to say, this conflicting with director Ken Russell's typical style of wanting heightened performances. Chayefsky had not seen the film before he took his name off the credits, the script being credited to Sidney Aaron, a pseudonym for Chayefsky, the 2 names being Chayefsky's real first and middle names. Russell and Chayefsky's fought constantly during the production, Russell maintaining that almost nothing was changed from Chayefsky's script and stating that he was impossible to please.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I found a couple things on that where like he adapted his own novel into the screenplay and then disowned it.
Yeah.
But I guess it's because, I don't know if it was a contractual obligation, but Russell was not allowed to alter any of the dialogue.
Okay.
But he could do whatever he wanted with stage direction and action.
Right.
And so Russell wanted to alter things and Chayefsky was like, no, you can't. And so that's why we get a lot of the overlapping dialogue. All of that comes from the actual script by Chayefsky, but Russell didn't really want to have it all there. So then he's like, we'll just have actors speak their lines at the same time, created this sort of like disorienting, but also unimportant moment. So I think that's where Chayefsky's upset because it's like, these are my words. This is my novel.
Right.
And Russell's just like, what you wrote isn't important. They'll say it at the same time.
Right. Rushing through it. Yeah.
And so that I found quite interesting. So that's how Russell sort of got around that, where he's like, well, I'll do other things with it and sort of change the tone and what happens with parts and scenes.
Yeah.
But I'll keep the dialogue true.
Interesting.
Yeah. The Ebert review was 3.5 stars.
Okay.
And I loved this line from it. A superbly silly movie. It's pure movie and very little meaning. And again, that keyed into me because at the time I was like, is there a lot of meaning in this? Now I think yes, but it is a great piece of cinema.
Yes.
Like the technical side, what they do with the effects, like this is the language of film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I quite like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a fun watch. That's for sure. I have one in an interview with the New York Times. Blair Brown said many of the actors and crew tried out the isolation tank. William Hurt actually hallucinated, while Brown found it very peaceful.
Yeah.
So that goes to what you were saying, how you have a friend that does the isolation tank, but he finds it very peaceful. So I wonder, now I'm intrigued. I kind of want to give it a go.
I wonder if it's how you go into it. Like, just like in the film, like Jessup is expecting transcendental experiences and then has them. So maybe William Hurt, based on his knowledge of the script and that, was like, I will expect to hallucinate, and therefore did.
Right. So he almost willed himself. Yeah.
He made it real.
It's like when you convince yourself you're sick.
Right.
Right.
I found a YouTube clip. It'll be on the website that talks about the effect of how they did the distortion of the body.
Oh, cool.
And it was bladders of water under a false latex skin. And then they could inflate and deflate based on water pressure. And at one point they had almost all of William Hurt's body covered with these. And that's how they sort of made that globular mass of his.
Yeah. Oh, so well done.
Very well done.
It's worth it to check this movie out just for that scene.
Yeah.
Some footage of hell in the hallucination is from Dante's Inferno, taken from the dream sequence.
Yep. I had Ken Russell claims he was the 27th choice for director for this film.
Oh, yeah.
Which is crazy, especially because so many reviews said he was the only director that could have done this movie this well.
Right.
So it's interesting. He's the 27th, but also the perfect choice. So,
yeah, that's funny. I also have Russell objecting to Chayefsky's interference, had the writer banned from the set. Chayefsky reportedly tried to have Russell removed as the director, but by then the film was well underway, and so they didn't want to take him off. Yeah. These guys just can't get along, eh?
No, they did not like each other.
No.
The last one I just had was watching Arthur Rosenberg, the assistant, and I was like, who is that? Like, it just kept needling at me the whole time. So eventually I did pause the movie. I was like, Bob Balaban. I'm like, I recognized his picture on IMDb immediately. And it's amazing how different he looks now versus in the film. Cause he looks almost Richard Dreyfuss-esque from Jaws.
He's got a full head of hair.
And a beard. Yeah.
He's the guy from Seinfeld that.
Yeah. He's Russell.
Books.
Russell Dalrymple.
Yeah.
Elaine's boyfriend
/
producer of the Seinfeld
TV show.
Yeah. He's basically been in every Wes Anderson movie from Moonrise Kingdom onwards.
Yeah.
And he's been in almost all of the Christopher Guest films.
He's amazing in Best in Show. In those Christopher Guest films, he's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. He always plays kind of the straight man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's Phoebe's dad from Friends.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I found this interesting. In Ken Russell's autobiography, he claimed he tried psychedelic-inducing magic mushrooms during the making of the film. It resulted in a bad trip.
Again, it's all where your mind is, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. He wasn't in a safe space.
No. Well, that's why I was like, I don't know if I would want to watch this film under the influence of
messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It could take you to some weird places. One of the things I thought I made a note of that I didn't put in any of the categories or anything was when they do the ritual and they cut his blood and put it into the pot. I was like, that is a massive pot of LSD. Yeah. I know it's not LSD, it is something else. And they take a soup spoonful of it and it hits them almost immediately.
Yeah.
And they're just all tripping out.
They made a community's full worth of LSD or potion.
Some hallucinogenic drug that they just went nuts on. Yeah. All right. With that, we're going to go into our watchability scale. And Mike, what would you rate this out of 10?
Again, this is one of those movies where I come into the podcast thinking one number, and then after the discussion, I go elsewhere because I I enjoyed it after the discussion and after the thought, but as the watching was going, it was a 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I was just like, it felt overhanded at points and it felt too hitting home. But then after discussion and sort of like looking at the philosophy of the film and that, it's a 6.
Nice.
Yeah, I think this is definitely one worth checking out. I'm not going to put it to the 7. I think there's a fair number of flaws with it, but yeah, it's a 6 for me.
I loved, when you talk about 2 parts of the movie, I loved that first part. I was right up until the caveman showed up. This film is amazing. I loved it. So I was on an 8 there. When the caveman showed up and all the other stuff happened, it dropped it. Yeah. So I put it to a 7.
Oh, okay.
I think it's worth watching. I really think it's worth investigating as far as, the philosophy behind it, the way it's shot. I loved the angles they used and the lighting and how the symbolism with the wife and the lizard and all that stuff. I really enjoyed the journey that this film took me on.
Yeah.
But as you said, there are flaws and there were times where I was just, okay, all right. When are we getting to this? He goes to the zoo. He's jumping on cars and come on, there's a dog scene that I was very annoyed with. I was like, why are we doing this? This film was so good.
Yeah.
And now we're going into these weird little side stories that I care nothing about.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, I'm going to hold it a 7. I definitely think people should check it out.
Yeah. And I think I'm happy to have it at a 6.5 on the scale because there is part of me that's like, could I almost go 7? But no. So between the two of us, it lands at where I think is appropriate.
Awesome. Okay, good. So thank you very much for listening to us. Remember to follow us on Instagram. We are at Scream Stream Pod. Stop by our website, screamsandstreams.com, where we have all the information about our episodes, descriptions of our categories, links to our research, our watchability scale, where we rank all of the films we are looking at, and a page where you can recommend movies you want us to discuss. And I'd really like anybody who's listening to kind of hit that one because we wouldn't have done Hitchcock if someone had not recommended that we do it.
Right.
And I'm interested in seeing other horror movies that maybe don't necessarily fit into the Rotten Tomatoes section.
Right.
So if you have a cool horror movie that you would like us to talk about, please put it in the recommended section of our website.
Yeah, we've definitely got some good titles coming up in the 80s from viewer recommendations. So
awesome. Please rate, comment on, and subscribe to our show on any of the platforms where you get your podcasts. Until next time, this has been Chad and
Mike.
Scare you later.